Hello, campers, and welcome to the 5th episode of Camp Half-BloodCast.
Where we last left off, Percy managed to defeat the Minotaur, losing his mom in the process, and then passed out on the front porch.
Today we tackle the 5th chapter, I Play Pinochle with a Horse. Percy slips in and out of sleep, catching tidbits of conversation he doesn't understand. He's spoon-fed pudding by a blonde girl who brings up the summer solstice, and if that wasn't enough, she speaks about theft too. Grover gives him the Minotaur horn, and Percy must face his mother's death. Grover takes Percy to meet his camp counselor, Mr. D, and a man by the name of Chiron, who happens to be Mr. Brunner, who really is Chiron, who then tells him that the Greek gods are alive and kicking in America. In fact, he is playing Pinochle with Dionysus. Grover eats a Diet Coke can. Oh, and apparently he drools in his sleep, and Chiron has horse legs. So,
Quite a lot to tackle.
I know. And also, as a quick, I have producer Mel made me aware that in last chapter / episode, I made the mistake of saying omnious instead of ominous.
You got it right.
I got it right.
Yay!
As a child of a poet, I have to get my words right. So I just wanted to say I'm sorry and remind you all again that we are European.
Okay.
So let's tackle this chapter.
So Percy, he slips between waking and sleeping, and he's being overlooked by quite a few characters. A blonde girl who feeds him pudding, he's seen before on the front porch. And she clearly has a motive.
Oh, yeah, she does. Like, she brings up, actually, she asks him what happens at the summer solstice.
As if he knows.
Yes, as if Percy has at any point proved that he knows anything about anything. However, you guys might remember we've actually pulled up the summer solstice quite a lot because it's a word that seems to keep happening to us, but it is once again rooted in Mr. Brunner's office.
Yeah, there's some sort of deadline, something will happen.
She basically asks what will happen, and then she asks what was stolen. Now,
Yeah,
we have not heard of anything being stolen
we
until now.
haven't. And she also seemingly doesn't want to be found out. She doesn't want anyone to be hearing this conversation.
Actually, the moment she realizes they're no longer alone, she shuts him off by just stuffing pudding down his throat, which is great. And he passes out again.
And then he wakes up and he sees a man who has eyes everywhere.
Frightening.
Yeah.
I'd probably think it was a hallucination. Actually, I will say Percy is actually coping with a lot of these things very well.
Yeah.
For a 12-year-old. I think I said I would pee my pants. I would have.
I mean, to be fair, he might be thinking that it's just a dream. But
There.
yeah. Next time he wakes up, he's no longer lying down in some
In a
sort of
bed.
hospital, but he's on a deck chair.
And he is looking out at this beautiful view. We have a beautiful meadow with green hills in the distance and a glass of what appears to be apple juice at his side.
Exactly.
I wish I was waking up like that every day. I'm
me too.
imagining the Swiss Alps.
But yeah, Grover's there too.
And he is just plain old Grover. He's wearing jeans, an orange shirt that says Camp Half-Blood, and Converse shoes. And Percy says, just plain old Grover, not goat boy.
But yeah, then Grover hands him a Minotaur horn.
Yeah.
And Percy realizes that it wasn't actually a dream. That all of it
Percy
happened.
actually, for a moment thinks that it's just plain old Grover, that none of this actually happened.
And that his mom is alive.
And then, basically Grover went back to get the horn because Percy saved his life, and he acknowledges that to Percy, and it kind of bursts Percy's dream of this being just all in his imagination.
Yeah, and he's trying to cope with Sally's death, looking around, looking at the beauty of the camp, and kind of wondering how things can be so beautiful when his mum is dead.
He actually notes the pine tree which marked the border to the camp. He thinks that it's even beautiful in the sunlight.
Yeah.
And he doesn't understand how it's all like that. He feels like the world should be gray and dark without Sally, because that's how he feels.
But then Grover comes in and he's like, oh, I failed as a satyr. I'm the worst satyr in the world. Yeah, he kicks off Fishy by an accident or something like that.
Yeah, and his hooves are in display again. I just think that like it's Percy. It's so like Grover is a kid, like the way he behaves. Like you think Grover is actually quite mature because he's been quite reasonable, but like that little hissy fit of like failing at everything is it's just so Grover and so like kid-like to remind us like they are children.
Yeah, exactly.
And honestly, like even as Percy realizes this, he's like he can't even find it in himself to care about satyrs or minotaurs. And
yeah, he kind of tries to comfort Grover, being like, "Oh, you didn't fail at your job." Yeah, and then Grover mentions that, like, explains actually that he's a keeper,
and it was his job to protect him, or it was at least.
Yeah,
whatever that means.
Percy feels like he's losing his strength again, so Grover helps him up and then feeds that drink.
The apple juice, which is not apple juice.
Yeah, it turns out to be his mum's freshly baked cookies.
And this kind of is off-putting to him for a moment, but he does end up feeling very comforted. Comforted.
There we go again.
Here we go again. No one's perfect. No, comforted. This is such a weird word.
And it also makes him feel stronger physically.
Yeah,
Sorry,
he feels...
I just moved on.
No. It's me struggling. He feels stronger physically, but the grief is just very, very, very much there. And I also want to note that he says his mom's blue cookies.
Yeah.
Did you say that? I'm so sorry.
I said freshly baked blue
but
cookies.
They're blue.
Because we remember blue food.
Blue food. But yeah, basically Grover wonders what it tastes like to him. And he says that. He says it's like his mother's. He actually describes it like it's a warm hand on his cheek, like brushing his cheek, telling him everything will be okay.
And then he apologizes that he didn't share it, which is so sweet.
No, it's such an angel. But like Grover actually looks quite disturbed by this fact. Yeah. Like he looks quite shocked, as if like how
why would you?
Like why would you? No. You shouldn't be giving it to me. But then he asks like what he feels like.
Yeah.
And as a flashback to episode 1, Percy says he feels like he could throw and see Boba Fett 100 meters.
But yeah, that's when Grover actually takes him to the camp director, Mr. D. Mm-hmm. He's like the activities director. And Karen.
Yeah. Like Karen is the camp activities.
Oh yeah, sorry.
The activities.
Sorry.
Oh my God. Activities director is Karen. And
the director.
Camp director is Mr. D. Percy just can't, like, as they're going to them, he can't believe what he sees. Like he's like noting this beautiful valley, but it's just like it's filled with Greek architecture, like ancient Greek architecture, and then teens all wearing these orange shirts that says Camp Half-Blood.
Yeah, and he also mentions seeing some horses with wings.
I know, he's like blown away. Like it's like, again, he's like really adapting to this very well. Like he's just like unfazed. He's walking around with his minotaur horn and just going, you know what?
Yeah,
sure. However, when they arrived with this horn in hand, we are reintroduced to the blonde girl that has been feeding him.
And instead of congratulating him, which he expects, he's like, oh, I managed to
I have the horn.
She's like, oh, you drool when you sleep.
Love her. We also learn that her name is in fact Annabeth. Basically, she kind of gets dismissed by Chiron. I think Chiron tells her to go prepare cabin 11 for him. Percy doesn't really acknowledge this because he is so surprised to see that Chiron is a familiar face.
Yeah, Chiron's Mr. Brunner.
Or Mr. Brunner is Chiron.
Yeah.
As we learn, that this was a title, a name he made up. He calls it a pseudonym because Grover had asked him to come to Yancey Academy because he believed Percy was something special. Then he gets asked to sit down and play a game of Pinochle with this odd man called Mr. D, who's actually quite flippant, first of all, and he's super rude to everyone around him.
Exactly.
Grover is actually really nervous, and Percy doesn't quite understand why that is.
And there's this kind of like exchange when Mr. D just wants to play the game, and then Karen and Grover kind of try to explain to Percy what's happening.
Basically, they all discover that Sally has not actually told Percy anything about his situation. And Mr. D is actually going, oh, this is how they always get killed. Like Jesus. Like, no, gods, not Jesus. Who? No, but yeah, he gets quite frustrated with that. And I think Chiron is actually a bit kinder regarding that.
Oh yeah,
like,
he's trying to
be a bit more gentle. He says something about like the original introduction video that they have is probably not going to be sufficient for Percy. And he says, son, or he doesn't say son, but it feels like he should be saying son. The Greek gods are real and they're alive.
And Percy's like, no.
No, I don't think so. He's like, not possible. And he actually, gets quite like, they're all pulling his leg.
He's like, oh, you mean like myths like you taught us in the class?
He's
and
like,
then
Hera, Zeus, Apollo, like, sure, not a chance. Well, Mr. D gets quite offended by this.
Exactly.
Also, he makes like Percy like instantly kind of feels like he's an alcoholic.
Oh yeah.
Like he instantly kind of just does not like Mr. D because he knows Gape. And
I was about to say he probably reminds him of.
And he's like wearing tiger print shirt, and it's just a pudgy, cherub-looking middle-aged man.
Exactly.
He does not like him, and he also corrects Percy when he asks him something, and goes like, "Sir," and he's like, "I don't like him."
Yeah, he keeps actually referring back to it throughout the whole conversation. Oh, I like him less and less.
So what Percy is then doing with this, saying, "I don't believe this." Mr. D is like, well, if you're not careful, someone is gonna incinerate you.
But then Grover's kind of like hinting, Percy, you might want to be careful.
And also Grover asks Mr. D if he can eat his Diet Coke can. I just actually remembered. Grover is like a chunk, like just munching on metal as we speak. He's very nervous, but yeah, he's just kind of munching.
Soon enough, the conversation turns in a way that Percy actually comes to realizing that Mr. D might actually be a god.
As this is all happening, Mr. D, like basically Chiron is like, everyone becomes a myth at one point. Yeah. You'd probably be a myth about little boys losing their mothers. And well, Mr. D creates a glass of wine out of thin air. And this is
and then
Percy's first experience with magic that hasn't tried to hurt him.
And then Mr. D turns the wine into a Diet Coke can.
And Percy is losing his marbles at this point. He is actually not okay. And basically Mr. D starts complaining about how it's so unfair. He has to be at this camp and he hates it, and he hates all these kids and little boys that don't believe. Very much like he hates them all. And that his father loves punishing him. At this point, Percy is like a light bulb goes off, and he says, your father, as in Zeus. And basically Chiron then explains to him that or maybe it is Mr. D, but they explained to him that he had gone for an off-limits nymph, and as punishment, he can no longer drink, and he has to spend 100 years, like a century in Camp Half-Blood, to kind of boost morale and like learn about these mortals' kids.
And we also have a moment about like not saying the names out loud, because they have power.
Yeah, Percy is like throwing these names around. Mr. G is like, I think you need to chill. Like, Jesus. Oh my God. I didn't realize to say Jesus this much, but
I didn't realize
gods.
Yeah.
Gods. Gods. Yeah, he, am I going to invoke Jesus?
No, please don't. Please.
Gee. Percy is looking at this pudgy man and going, no way, that is a god. And then Mr. D turns to him with a look in his eyes of Percy seeing himself being turned into all kinds of crazy things, like a dolphin. And he says he just knows instantly in that moment that this god could, or this man that he thinks he is, could put a sickness in his brain that is untreatable. And Mr. D is like, you still want to try me? And he goes, no. Because he understands at that moment. And then Chiron explains to him that, oh, well, no, he loses the game.
Yeah,
Then
Mr. D loses the game. And Percy's like, oh my God, now there's going to be a problem. But Mr. D just goes like, oh.
Yeah, like Mr. D is like, he looks angry, like he's gonna lash out, and Percy is quite, I think maybe he's seen Gabe do this, and this is why he reacts so strongly. But Mr. D is just like, time for a nap, and he asks Grover to come with him to explain this failed mission of his.
And then Chiron talks about how it's possible that the gods are now in America.
Because he says, because Percy is actually worried for Grover. He doesn't want Grover to be alone with Mr. D. And then Chiron says, oh, Mr. D is not so bad. He's just upset he can't go to Mount Olympus. And then Percy's like, to ancient, like to Greece. and
the Chiron's like, no, Mount Olympus is now in America.
Like in the spiritual sense of it, anyway.
Because like the center of the Western culture moves as the culture evolves and moves to the most important area culturally. Of course, Americans think that's
he does,
the most important ones.
To be fair, he does note that that it's moved to Rome and then it moved to London and stayed for a long time, which you will know this like was a huge industrial movement, and that's probably why it's spent so long there. And then now, I mean, you have capitalism, all these things that's definitely grown in America.
Exactly.
So yeah, Mount Olympus is in America.
Percy also wants to kind of know who he is at this point.
And who Chiron is.
Exactly. But then Chiron kind of dismisses it a little bit.
He says, you know what? We don't have time for that right now. He says, we'll talk about it later. Like any adult who don't want to answer questions is like, we'll talk about it later. We're going to take you to Cabin 11. And that's kind of where the chapter ends.
Yeah, just one thing before it ends. He rises from his wheelchair and
reveals, like the most important thing,
reveals that he's actually half horse.
He is a centaur.
Yeah,
and I can't believe I almost forgot that. That was the horse part of the chapter. That is the horse he plays Pinochle with.
So yeah, basically then they leave to kind of explore the camp.
To go on a tour. There's a lot of myths to unpack in this chapter, genuinely. But I will say, for 1 second, when me and Zeus decided to start this podcast, I said we should have days where we just come dressed in honor of a character. So today I'm wearing leopard print for Dionysus because I forgot it was tiger print. I was like, his sacred animal is the leopard.
All of you who listen to us, you can't see it, but all of you who are watching this, you can see.
I am wearing leopard print pants in honor of Mr. D.
You're Dionysus today.
I'm Dionysus today. I should stop being very horrible as a person.
No, please don't.
So, to unpack some myth, do you want to start with our first guy?
Yeah, I'm going to start with Perseus. What?
No, start with Perseus. Actually, can we do a quick note on our chapter? Another reason Percy starts to believe this is because Dionysus calls him Perseus Jackson, and he never tells anyone his true name.
Yeah, exactly. And
hard at work, guys. We're really hard at work. So maybe, say Perseus first.
So Perseus, he's a demigod as Perseus, but he's son of Zeus, and he's actually one of the ancient Greece's greatest heroes. But he actually gets a happy ending. Most of them,
very rare.
Most of them die painful, horrible death, but he's kind of an exception in that sense. And he slays the Gorgon Medusa and saves Princess Andromeda of Ethiopia. Just a note on that, Greeks had a different sense of what the universe is, what the world looks like. That's why it's Ethiopia. But yeah, she's being saved from being fed to sea monster Cetus. And a funny note on Percy is he's both half-brother and great-grandfather to Heracles. As they're both sons of Zeus, but Heracles' mum is his granddaughter.
I know.
It's so complicated.
It's so complicated. Like we all need. I think the ancient Greek people need help.
But yeah, then we have Argus, who's the guy covered in eyes. He's got 100 eyes, and he was appointed by Hera to watch a cow into which Hera turned her priestess into, priestess Io. I think that's how you say it. So yeah,
this will happen quite a lot. If you remember, was it the last episode about the eagle? Yeah. No, not the last. 2 episodes ago. Episode 3 about the eagle. The guy who was turned into an eagle by Hera. Like, this is going to be a common theme.
Yeah. She likes turning people into animals. Especially. But yeah, basically he was there to guide her, but he was slain by Hermes in the Homeric poems. And his eyes were transferred by Hera into the tail of the peacock, basically. And Hermes was sent by Zeus, who was in love with the priestess, and he wanted her free, basically. And the way he did it was by playing his pipes until Argus's eyes fell asleep, and then he chopped his head off. And yeah, that also gave him the name of Argifontus. No, Argifontus. Was that it?
Producer Mel?
Yeah. Argifontus, which basically means the slayer of Argus.
I know. I sometimes think, like, you know what, Hera, you're like the original Gone Girl. Like, kind of. But
yeah.
So I have our 2 camp directors. Today, first, we start with Chiron. Chiron was a centaur in the original myths, and he was actually Cronus's offspring. If you remember Cronus, we talk about him in the first episode. He was known as the wisest and justest of all centaurs, and it was because he was fostered by Apollo, who is god of many, many things. But he taught him medicine, herbs, music, archery, hunting, gymnastics, and prophecy, which made him rise over, like, what they say is the beastly nature of centaurs, who were known to be quite, like, brutal and savages, which, I mean, I think it's a weird word to use about them, but yeah, that's what it says. Due to his knowledge, though, that Apollo had given him, he was credited with the discovery of botany and pharmacy. And I actually just want to think about that for a moment. Like, I want to know in, like, original, like, if you take the myth part away, like, who discovered botany and pharmacy? Like, it must have been someone and they just call him Chiron. But, like, where did the centaur part come from? That is the real question. But yeah, he is actually credited with training many, many, many young heroes. Some of them including Achilles and Patroclus, who are both heroes in the Iliad, in the Trojan War, which we're not covering today.
Please, let's not.
There's a whole book on that. And then we got Mr. D, also known as Dionysus. So Dionysus is one of the 12 Olympians. He actually started out as a demigod. He is Zeus's son, but not Hera's son. Again, there's like a recurring theme here. Yeah. He was the god of many, many, many things. He was a god of wine, theater, insanity, fruit and orchards, fertility, ritual madness, not just insanity, also ritual madness.
It's all quite connected.
Yeah. And he had religious ecstasy and festivities. Which is like, he was known as like, yeah, like he had lots of cults, which were basically just going crazy. And in the chapter, however, he does mention that he has been banished to Camp Half-Blood, or like thrown off Olympus, for going after an off-limits nymph, which is based on a real myth. I think it's actually happened twice. But there is a specific one where he tricks the nymph Nicaea. I think producer Mel is nodding.
Nicaea. Okay.
Nicaea. What did you say?
Nothing.
No, but maybe it was right. What did you say?
Nicaea?
Nicaea?
Or Nicaea? Probably Nicaea.
Yeah, sure. One day I will get through one chapter without making a mistake.
Don't even promise that.
I will. Just like every day I promise I'll be on time, and I never am. Um, she was a sworn virgin. And what happened was Dionysus swapped the water in the spring for wine, and she drank it until she knocked herself unconscious. And then we're doing a PG version. He did very bad things to her while she was unconscious. And I too would sentence him to sobriety and maybe 1,000 years at camp, not just 100, but that would be bad for the kids. So we don't do it. For the kids, 100 years, but he deserved that. I don't even I didn't actually read up on I don't think it has consequences in the real.
in the myths, I don't know. Probably
I don't
not.
think it did.
I mean, Zeus used to do bad things to people and never got punished.
But it is she was sworn off. Maybe it is so. Just quick on Dionysus, but we're not going to cover that today. There's a lot of varied ideas about Dionysus's myth. There's a lot of people that don't actually really can't pinpoint where he showed up in. And was he a god? Was he a demigod originally? Did he get killed once, twice, or thrice? He is there's a lot about him. Reading up on him was actually a bit of a nightmare, but we've decided to, now I'm mentioning it, but yeah. So there's a lot going on with him. So I don't know if he was actually punished for this crime.
Probably not. But yeah, going back to the books.
Yeah, sorry. We said there was actually a lot of myths to cover today. This is actually our heaviest myth chapter.
So going back to the books, what are your character highlights?
My character highlight. So, Mr. D, he is blunt, does not appear to like kids at all. He appears shallow, and he clearly is not one to cross, if we believe what Percy saw.
Yeah. My highlights are actually quotes, 2 of them. One, Annabeth saying, "You drool when you sleep."
Oh, Annabeth.
It's beautiful.
I love that. I have that as well as on my fave moments. I absolutely love that. We don't know Annabeth. I put Annabeth down as not necessarily a rule follower. We kind of touch on that when she tries to get answers from a clearly injured Percy. She has no hesitation. So we kind of I think she's not a rule follower. That's what we see very early on. She's also blunt, unfazed, helpful. But I wonder, is it for her own gain?
Probably. She's strategic.
Yeah, I know. I would say she's clearly shown that she doesn't care much for rules. She knows she's doing something wrong. But when authority is telling her to do something, she agrees. But yeah, again, is it because it keeps her involved? That is the real question.
Probably. But yeah, my another highlight is also a quote from Grover when he addresses Mr. D. And I feel like that it changes the way we see Grover a little bit. Because he's going if you're not going to eat it, could I have your Diet Coke can?
Yeah.
And that's the first time he actually eats a can.
Yeah. He was just munching, just stress munching.
What are your favorite moments then?
Well, I also have Chiron on here, actually.
Oh, do you? Oh, sorry.
That's okay. We have been introduced to Mr. Brunner previously. I just wanted to follow up on that because our original were he wants something from Percy. He's hiding something. But we see Mr. Brunner's real form, a centaur, and we finally discover just what he wanted from Percy, which is that actually these stories that he wanted was not a theory on capitalism or eat or be eaten, but actually because it was Percy's life. It is something that will keep him alive. And yeah, he just seems like he's a kinder of the camp authorities.
Yeah, definitely. Although I feel like that thing that he says, would you like to be called a myth on how young boys deal with their mum's death? That was savage.
Absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
This is why centaurs are savages.
But,
Apollo, get a grip.
To be fair, my favourite moment is also quite brutal. Because it's when Percy looks Dionysus in the eyes and he sees dark visions. I feel like that gives us a really well-rounded first impression on the character, though. Because otherwise he would just be this this guy, he's just a bit
Just
rude.
some guy. Just some guy.
Yeah, but now you could actually see him as a god.
Yeah.
Like, it's a crucial thing to present him as the god.
Yeah,
like, it's a crucial moment.
It gives you respect,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
that's the thing. Like, he's like this whiny, pudgy man, and like no one really, like, even Percy is like, he calls it, like, because Dionysus tells him to call him sir. Actually, maybe find it directly in the book. He goes, he says, you do know how to play Pinochle? Mr. D eyed me suspiciously. I'm afraid not, I said. I'm afraid not, sir, he said. Sir, I repeated. I was liking the camp director less and less. Like, at this point, he's kind of just, I think, set him together with Gabe in his mind. And he feels like he can disrespect him and get away with it, because Percy is quite a smart kid, even if he doesn't think so. But as you said, the glance Mr. D sends him is really something.
Yeah.
Enough to invoke. I'm having a good time today.
Yeah. Okay. So what are your favorite moments?
So, I have like quite a lot in this chapter. I'd say like Percy in like trying to make Grover feel better, even though his mom just died. I think their friendship is something so very special to me.
Yeah.
And then I have You Drool When You Sleep on here as well. And then the first look we get at Camp Half-Blood. I mean, it's very small, but I'm glad that we have it. I'm glad they note the pine tree, which will be important someday.
So important.
And I have Mr. D down again, like you probably. Like, I love like when he gives him that, like, because Mr. D is kind of like an annoying fun uncle, but you should not cross him, and this is the energy he should be sending. And then I got Percy thinking about his mom, because would it be me if I didn't note something about Percy and his mom? And then, getting told not to throw names around. I have that as, again.
It's quite important, yeah.
I know, and father loves to punish me. Another very, very important line that's thrown in quite casually.
Yeah.
But as we go on with the series, I think this is something that will really come across. And yeah, I'm afraid not, sir. But what about your quote that you think defines?
Again, I keep noting down moments that define the chapter, not quite. So in this one, I think the moment when Karen explains why gods are in America is quite important, because I even remember reading it the first time and being like, why? But then he kind of gives it context again, and it makes everything also quite feasible. You can imagine just like gods being there, being a part of actual culture and reality.
Yeah, especially because he does pinpoint that like the actual Mount Olympus is very much still in Greece, but the spiritual form of Mount Olympus has gone with the Western.
Exactly.
Because, I mean, the Western culture started with ancient Greece, so it's quite interesting. And I put down the quote, I wasn't liking Mr. D much, but there was something about the way he called me mortal, as if he wasn't.
Yeah.
I think that really defines what's about to happen.
I feel like we talked a long time and we had someone from the cabin next to us literally buzzing. Did you hear that?
No.
They're like, zzz. I don't know if you
but I
did.
have choir practice later, so I actually need to save my voice.
Okay.
I gotta make Daddy Dear proud.
Oh, I'm gonna check out what that buzzing was.
That is so fine. Yeah, you do that. I think
I
think it's something for the Athena cabin and not for the Apollo cabin.
Probably. Like the intensity of the buzzing was kind of like as if they're trying to get me to go there.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're usually the ones causing the problems. But thank you.
We'll sort it out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for listening.
And seeing.
Bye.